There's something curious about driving at night. The darkness seems to swallow everything around you, and the sound of the engine is almost like a mesmerizing soundtrack, pulling you into a trance-like state. That's exactly what happened on that trip. I was alone, cruising along a nearly deserted highway, with the clock ticking just past midnight. The plan was simple: get to my destination without stopping, but fatigue was starting to weigh me down. My eyes were burning and my hands on the steering wheel were stiff. That's when I saw the lights. A gas station stood alone, like a shining island in the dark ocean of the road. There was something strange about the way it appeared. It was as if it had been placed there on purpose, almost out of place, but I had no choice. The fuel gauge was dangerously close to empty, and I knew there was no other option but to stop. As I approached, an uneasy feeling began to take hold of me. It wasn't exactly fear, but something about the stillness of that place made my mind work overtime. I thought to myself, it's just a quick pit stop. Nothing will happen. As soon as I parked, I noticed how quiet it was. The kind of quiet that makes your heart beat faster, as if your body is trying to warn you of something you haven't yet noticed. I got out of the car hesitantly, trying to ignore the discomfort that seemed to grow with every step. The light from the nearby street lamp flickered intermittently, casting dancing shadows across the cracked asphalt. The only thing that broke the silence was the muffled sound of the wind, which seemed to whisper something incomprehensible. Outside the convenience store, the automatic door opened before I even got close. Inside, a cold fluorescent light illuminated nearly empty shelves. The air smelled of disinfectant mixed with something metallic, like rust. The clerk was behind the counter. He seemed oblivious to my presence, engrossed in something on his cell phone. He was a thin man with a haggard face, but what really caught my attention was the absence of any emotion in his expression. It was as if he was there only physically, while his mind wandered somewhere else, far away. "Good evening," I said, more to break the silence than to start a conversation. He looked up slowly, but didn't answer. He just stared at me, as if he was evaluating something in me. It was uncomfortable. I paid for the gas and quickly left, feeling his gaze burning into my back. Back in the car, I started filling up the tank. The sound of gasoline flowing into the tank was the only noise, until I noticed something strange. Footsteps. They were light, but audible, coming from somewhere nearby. I looked around, but saw no one. The tension was growing with each passing second. It wasn't as if I was seeing something threatening. It was what I couldn't see that felt wrong. I decided to finish filling up as quickly as possible and get out of there. That's when I heard a noise that made me freeze. The sound of the automatic door opening by itself again. I turned toward the store, expecting to see someone leaving, but the door was empty. No sign of movement, no sound other than the faint rustling of the wind. I stood there for a moment, trying to understand what had happened, until something made me hold my breath. Inside, far back, a shadow seemed to move among the shelves. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. My instinct told me to get in the car and leave, but something about the scene paralyzed me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fear of turning my back on something I didn't understand. The automatic door closed again, with that low, unsettling hiss. I looked back at the attendant, who remained behind the counter. He didn't seem to have noticed anything strange, or at least he pretended not to. But there was something in his posture, an almost artificial stiffness, that bothered me deeply. I picked up the gas pump and fitted it back into its base, my eyes still fixed on the store entrance. That was when I saw it in a flash. The shadow was now closer. There was no longer any doubt. Something or someone was moving around inside. My heart raced. I looked around, hoping to see another car, any sign of life that might give me some comfort. But the gas station remained completely deserted. I took a deep breath, trying to convince myself that maybe it was just the attendant moving around. But then he moved. The attendant, who had been motionless until then, slowly raised his head and looked directly at me. Not as if he was curious or concerned, but as if he knew exactly what I had seen. The air seemed to grow heavier, and at that moment, I knew I had to get out of there. I climbed into the car and slammed the door, trying not to look scared, but the quick movement must have drawn attention. Before I could start the engine, something caught my eye in the rear-view mirror. In the rear-view mirror, I saw a figure standing at the entrance to the store. It was tall and thin, with its shoulders hunched forward, as if it were trying to peer through the glass door. The intermittent lighting of the gas station cast distorted shadows on its face, hiding details that somehow made the scene even more disturbing. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, like a statue, staring at me. My heart was racing, and for a moment, I considered the possibility that it was just my imagination playing tricks. But something was definitely wrong. As I started the car, the sound of the engine echoed like thunder in the oppressive silence of the night. The figure took a step forward. Just one step, but it was enough to make me grip the steering wheel tighter, feeling the sweat trickle down the back of my neck. I accelerated, speeding away from the gas station. As I drove away, I glanced again in the rear-view mirror. The figure was now in the middle of the road, its back to the store, but still motionless. It was as if it was watching me drive away, unhurried, emotionless. Driving should have been a relief, but the discomfort remained. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was someone strange, but harmless. Maybe fatigue was making me exaggerate things. But as I drove down the dark road, I began to notice something even more disturbing. My car's headlights illuminated the signs and curves of the road, but there was something else on the road. On the horizon, barely visible, a silhouette seemed to be walking slowly. The same thin build, the hunched shoulders. It was impossible. There was no way anyone could be in front of me after I had driven off so fast. I stepped on the gas, determined to get past it and leave it all behind. But the closer I got, the more certain I became. It was the same figure. My mind struggled to find a logical explanation. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe I was just overwhelmed. But when I passed the figure, my heart sank. It was the same face, the same posture, the same blank stare I'd seen at the gas station. I sped up, my eyes fixed on the road ahead, but something forced me to look in the rear-view mirror. My stomach turned. The figure was now turned, watching my car as I drove away. There was no way it could have moved so fast. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly I could barely feel my hands. The silence inside the car was overwhelming, broken only by the muffled sound of tires on asphalt. But then another sound came. A faint thud, like something was hitting the bodywork of the car. The sound was coming from behind. My heart felt like it was pounding in my chest. Against every instinct that screamed at me to keep driving, I glanced in the rear-view mirror again. There was nothing there. Just the dark, empty road. I tried to calm myself, telling myself I was imagining things. The fatigue, the tension, all of it could be playing tricks on me. But when I glanced at the passenger seat out of the corner of my eye, I realized I wasn't alone. There was a mark there, in the fabric of the seat, as if someone had recently sat in it. The smell was different, too. A strange metallic odor began to fill the air, and my stomach churned. That's when I heard something I'll never forget. Heavy, low breathing coming from inside the car.